Today I'd like to introduce you to one of the most recent additions to our land of Eorzea. A race not native to our continent, but one that has joined our adventurers' ranks in good numbers. A large race of furry men that was supposed to be the beastly race, but really just ended up having such soft fur and personalities that you can't just help but go over and pet them. Today we'll be talking about the Hrothgar. The glorious kitty daddies, the burly buff feline men, the fierce furry friends, the Rugidan's feline wrestling pal, the Hrothgar. They've got quite the history and are a very interesting people. So let's go over this history, as well as where they came from and how to interact with them. Let's shake things up and start with a history lesson on Hrothgar, then explain how they got here. The Hrothgar hail from our neighbouring continent, Ilsabard. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a map of Ilsabard. We just have this ocean of clouds covering the continent. This will hopefully change in the Endwalker expansion, since we'll be going to Golemund, but for now, you're just gonna be blessed by my completely accurate and perfect rendition of Ilsabard. Here it is. Anywho, the Hrothgar. The Hrothgar live in the southeastern region of the continent, in their lands named Bosya. They neighboured
Demacia
to the east, and have the wetlands of Gangos to the south. Their immediate west is the state of Corvus. Fun fact, the person who taught Xenos his swordsmanship came from Corvus. During the Third Astral Era, the Hrothgar lived in the mountains north of Bosya. They were very few in number and lived in hiding, mostly because the Allegan Empire was pretty dang strong at this point, and had a habit of purging people that didn't like submitting. Also, lots of infighting, because of course. Eventually, someone got tired of this. Someone rose up to guide and unite the glorious Hrothgar people. It was her, Gunhildr, she who became the first queen of all Hrothgar. No more hiding in fear, she said. No more fighting each other. We will unite and fight those Allegans.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
From hearing this, the Hrothgar, with hearts filled with pride, rose up to drive out the Allegan Empire. The Queen's guard and soldiers rushed the Allegan lines, screaming for their freedom. And it went something like this. Yeah, not so well. Thankfully, the Hrothgar as a whole did survive their defeat, and after the fall of the Allegan Empire in the Fourth Umbral Calamity, the Hrothgar Queen Gunhildr.
Bosian story spoilers. Data redacted.
And then the Garleans made a teeny tiny whoopsie that ended up with the entire Bosian citadel turned into a crater. There were 0 survivors. And that's how we got to fighting in the Southern Front today. Now, is this narrative even true? The game and practically every single Hrothgar would have you believe this. But myself, I don't think so. It just doesn't add up. So here's the real history of the Hrothgar. The Hrothgar are actually all male Makote that were rejected by females. These males were just not strong enough, and were subsequently bullied into exile by the stronger males, moving to the lands known as Bosya today. So what did they do after they got rejected? Did they sulk in a corner and waste away? No. They devised a plan. They would get swole. Really swole. And then return to Eorzea and show those who pushed them around what a real cat looks like. But through their training they became something else. Something more. They became Hrothgar. And then forgot all about their goal and turned into those guys who practically live at the gym, constantly working out and complimenting each other's bodies. This version of history is further supported by the fact that we never see female Hrothgar. Not a single one. It's because they never existed. Thus the story is clearly true. Hrothgar have women? I hear some Hrothgar say. They're just super rare. Oh really? Your girlfriend exists but she just goes to another school? How very convenient. So now, how'd they get here? Well, they mostly arrived in Eorzea by boat. Probably to trade. Unfortunately, the Hrothgar didn't really think this whole trade idea through. For you see, they originally didn't speak the common language, and used hissing and growling to communicate. This hissing and growling, along with their imposing stature and their very sharp claws and fangs, led to, well...
Stop right there, you mangy house cat! You'll make a fine pair of boots! Die! 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 Why won't you die?
Yeah, there was almost immediate panic and fighting. After this, the Hrothgar left and had a little think. Let's first learn the local language instead of roaring at people to get them to buy our protein shakes. Interestingly, the Rhuigadin and Hrothgar never fought. Their first interaction went something like this. When the Hrothgar learned to speak to the less swole races and returned, they were immediately welcomed, and the Hrothgar could join our adventurers across the realm. Also, look at that snoot, ready for the boops. Boop. So we know of their history and how they got here, but how do we interact with them? Well, since we now know the Hrothgar are actually just uber buff and furry Makote with amazingly boopable snoots, boop, we know that interacting with a Hrothgar is quite similar to that of interacting with a Makote, right? Well, sort of. They're like Makote, but also Rhuigadin at the same time. You get the best of both worlds with the Hrothgar. You get the lovely purring and, if you're tall enough, you can give them ear scratches. But also you can get that loving and powerful embrace of a father. Except, this hug is lined with fur, so it's almost like you're being wrapped in a warm blanket. And, never forget, they have the snoot. The boopable snoot. Boop. There's not much more to it than that. Look up how to interact with Makote and Rhuigadin, and then you'll know how to interact with a Hrothgar. Before we move on to their naming, we have to go over a very important note on Hrothgar culture. The Hrothgar worship their queen. Their entire culture revolves around their queens, tending to their queen's whims and making sure she's always happy. Yes, note plural, queens. As we've discussed, they did at one point have a single powerful matriarch who ruled over all of them, but that Bozia was destroyed, and today there are many small communities of Hrothgar, each with their own queen. These Hrothgar have been labelled as Helians, queens eventually die though, and Hrothgar, who have lost their queen, cry and mourn a lot. After this period of mourning, they begin to travel. They are known to take on any profession and become a sort of jack of all trades. Yet they seem to always try their best to avoid work that prevents them from being able to travel. They find that the nomadic life, quote, best suits their current situation. Perhaps through their travels they're searching for something new to have their lives revolve around? Hint, hint. These Hrothgar are labelled as the Lost. Now with this knowledge, let us tackle two of the biggest misconceptions about the Hrothgar. 1. Hylians all have warm coloured fur, while the Lost all have cold coloured fur. Yeah, the character creator makes it seem like this, but I have a feeling this was done intentionally to perpetuate this myth. Fur colour actually has nothing to do with the two clans. The two clans only denote if the Hrothgar has a living queen or not. They can have any fur colour. And 2, that there even are two clans of Hrothgar. Hrothgar are actually a single people. The clans of the Hylians and the Lost were categories imposed upon them by other races. Probably us here. Whoops. We'll have to go over their naming conventions before I can prove this to you though. So let's do that now. The Hrothgar are split into two clans, the Hylians and the Lost, except as we've just discussed, they're not. However, this clan split is still very useful in understanding their naming conventions. The Hrothgar names are those of old Slavic names, except the term Slav has been changed into Tagar. Examples are Vladitagar, Stravko, Kazek, and Goitagar. Moving on to their surnames. A Hrothgar surname is the name of the clan's female, their queen. If the queen is still living, the Hrothgar would be a Hylian, and a surname would be prefixed with an A. Examples are Amira, Amov, and Astola. However, if the Hrothgar's queen is missing, dead or otherwise, the Hrothgar will change his surname. He drops the A prefix and attaches the SCH suffix to the surname. Examples are Mirasic, Movsic, and Stolasic. This surname difference and the fact that they are or aren't serving a queen at the moment is the only thing that differentiates a Hylian from a Lost. That's it. Here's proof. Stanek Alubov is a Hrothgar with silver fur, a colour that can only be used by the Lost. But look at his surname. He's a Hylian. Velibor Azentina is another example. A bluish furred Hrothgar. Another colour only available to the Lost, yet he is also a Hylian. So yes, this does mean you can start by using either of the Hrothgar clans, and just by changing your surname, you will become part of either the Lost or the Hylians. And that's our conclusion. That's what there is to know about the Hrothgar. I hope you enjoyed. But for now, goodbye my friends, and have a great day.
Thank you.